On today's edition of Notable New England, I have your Wicked Lite Bites, lighthearted, community-oriented stories and happenings from each New England state. Then I speak with Zoë Knight, singer, songwriter, pianist, vocal coach, and Berklee College of Music professor, about her brand new album, Love Cycle, which is all about embracing community, giving thanks, and spreading love. I'm excited to talk with her and hope you'll enjoy the conversation. Stick around for a groovy episode. Hello, lovely listeners, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of Notable New England. I'm your host, Gretchen B., and I'm so happy to have you here today. I have a great show ahead. If you're looking for some new music to add to your rotation, you are going to want to add Zoë Knight's Love Cycle, which just came out on the first day of spring. I have a really wonderful conversation with her about the making of the album and its meaning. I hope you'll find it interesting, and perhaps it'll open you up to some new music from a New England artist. But before we get into my conversation with Zoë, let's dig into some Wicked Lite Bites, lighthearted, community-oriented stories and happenings from each New England state. Calling all book lovers, Bookstock 2025, the Vermont Festival of Words, is coming up on May 16th through the 18th in Woodstock, Vermont. It's a celebration of books and storytelling with poets and authors joining in the fun. Opening night events on May the 16th are going to take place at Artistry Community Arts Center, Theater, and Gallery. On Saturday, you'll find talks and readings by award-winning authors and poets. There is a great used bookstore sale, a lot of exhibitors, music and activities for children, and food on and around the green in the heart of Woodstock. The Norman Williams Public Library will host their own used and rare book sale. Plus, there's plenty to experience around Woodstock, including restaurants, bakeries, and many interesting local shops. To get more information and a schedule of events, visit bookstockvt.org for more information, or check my show notes for the link. Information for this event is provided by the Bookstock VT website. Grammy Award-winning country artist Zach Bryan has purchased the former St. John Baptiste Church in Lowell, Massachusetts, and he will be converting it into the Jack Kerouac Center. St. John Baptiste Church was built in 1890, and it's where Jack Kerouac served as an altar boy and where his funeral was held. The building is 20,439 square feet, and it's going to be converted into an arts center that will feature exhibits, live music, public readings, and community events. Jim Sampis, literary executor of the Jack Kerouac estate, said in a press release, quote, "We're thrilled to be working with Zach Bryan and his team to honor Jack Kerouac in such a meaningful way. The Jack Kerouac Center will stand as a lasting symbol of inspiration, forever linking Jack and Zach." Zach Bryan's investment is a significant addition to the cultural fabric of Lowell and beyond, drawing visitors from all over the world. Information for this story came from David Cifarelli of Mass Live. Okay, Mainers, put away your lawnmowers in May. Communities across the Pine Tree State are taking part in No Mow May, which is an initiative to encourage people to let their grass grow and to let flowers bloom so it attracts pollinators. Some communities even have signs that you can put on your lawn to show your support and participation in No Mow May. quote, letting the lawn grow longer and allowing more flowers to bloom can provide more nectar for pollinators, says Andrew Tufts, program manager for Bringing Nature Home, which is a program at the Maine Audubon Society. He continues, quote, pollinators are integral into the reproduction of plants, and they are just integral parts of the ecosystem we are all part of. I'd recommend starting with making your lawn a friendly place for pollinators. And if you want to do this beyond May, you actually could be helping even more. Andrew Tufts goes on to say, quote, think about mowing less throughout the entire growing season and roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, and on top of that, raising the mower blade to the highest level possible. The goal is to reduce the amount of lawn you have, as well as to integrate more native plants into your landscape. Andrew says that small changes to your lawn, like growing wild strawberries or violets, for example, can make a huge difference. Information for this story comes from Katie Delaney at News Center, Maine. This one's for all the movie buffs out there. Prescott Park in Portsmouth, New Hampshire announced the lineup of summer movies for the Wentworth Douglas Movie Night series this summer. Mark your calendars. The kickoff date is Monday, June 23rd, where they will be showing the movie Twisters. The series takes place most Monday nights through August 27th. The films that they're going to be showing this year, in addition to Twisters, are The Wild Robot, Rear Window, Rocky, Mamma Mia, The Last Waltz, Mufasa, Wicked, and Ghostbusters. Bring your own blankets, snacks, popcorn, non-alcoholic beverages, and the family or some of your friends to enjoy movies under the stars along Portsmouth's beautiful waterfront. You can get more information on the series by visiting prescottpark.org, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes for you. This information comes from the Prescott Park Arts Festival website and Facebook page. If you love oysters and chowder, you won't want to miss the Newport Oyster and Chowder Festival happening May 17th and 18th, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., rain or shine, on the waterfront at Bowen's Wharf in Newport, Rhode Island. The event offers free admission, and food and drink are available for purchase. This will feature Rhode Island's top oyster farms and favorite restaurants. There will be live music as well as signature cocktails you can try. For more information on the event, the website address is very long, so I'm going to put that link to the festival in the show notes for you to check out. Information about this event came from the Bowen's Wharf website. New Haven Community Boating is hosting the 8th annual Dragon Boat Regatta on Saturday, June 7th from 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Canal Dock Boathouse. That's located at 475 Long Wharf Drive in New Haven, Connecticut. You'll enjoy music by a DJ, food, and you can cheer on the paddlers as they race their beautiful dragon boats across the water. The races are 200 to 250 meters, lasting just 1 to 2 minutes, and the teams race 3 times. Dragon boating, if you are not familiar, is a water sport that originated over 2,000 years ago in ancient China. Traditionally, it was used in rituals to honor the water dragon deity and promote community unity. Today, dragon boating has evolved into an exciting competitive sport that embodies teamwork, synchronization, and a festive spirit. It's a fun event for the whole family and completely free to watch. For more information, visit canaldock.org/dragon. Don't worry, I'll put that in the show notes for you. This information comes from the New Haven Community Boating website as well as Visit Connecticut's website. Up up after the break, I'll be joined by Boston singer, songwriter, pianist, and music professor Zoë Knight to discuss her new album, Love Cycle, which is focused around the importance of community, gratitude, and love. You are listening to Notable New England. If you've enjoyed hearing about the people, places, and history that make New England so special, I hope you'll consider supporting the show at a sustaining level at patreon.com/Notable New England. For as little as $2 a month, you'll help cover production costs, research, and get great perks like early ad-free episodes, exclusive merch, and more. You can go over there to patreon.com/Notable New England. Prefer a one-time show of support? Well, you can do that too. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Notable New England. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/Notable New England. And you'll even get a shout out on the show. And I have a free way that you can help support the podcast. Leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts, or simply tell a friend or family member about the podcast. It helps more people discover the show. It brings in new listeners and helps keep our storytelling community growing. If an episode has ever made you feel inspired, entertained, or even just more connected to New England, I hope you'll consider helping out. Thanks for listening, and thanks for keeping these stories alive. Zoë Knight is a Boston-based singer, songwriter, pianist, and music educator. She and her band Mythical Beasts have put out a brand new album that she describes as a 5-movement song cycle, psychedelic art rock odyssey that tells the story of one individual's shift from a lifetime of hyper-independence to embracing community support. It is meant to remind us that we are better together even when we feel most apart. I have a copy of this album, and it really leaves you feeling hopeful, grateful, and recognizing the importance of community and love. And I have to say, the album artwork is super cool. I'm so glad to have Zoë joining me today to discuss her new album and the behind-the-scenes stories about its creation. Welcome to the podcast, Zoë.
Thank you so much for having me, Gretchen. It's my pleasure.
Excellent. I'm so glad to have you here. You released Love Cycle on the first day of spring, and can you tell us what the significance of releasing on that date was and why that was special to you?
Sure. Well, I try to release things on auspicious days, and the first day of spring represents this birth of new life, and that was sort of the culminating message of this album, was entering a new phase in life. So it resonated with that, and also it makes it easy to remember the release date.
Very true. Very true. And the album features your beautiful songwriting, singing, piano playing, and it has a lot of wonderful Boston area musicians. Can you tell us about the band as well and how they help to kind of shape the sound of the album?
Sure. So there are a lot of people who played on this album, and my approach to this album was very different than my first album, The Good, which was the first album was recorded live in studio in 4 sessions with 4 different lineups and no rehearsals. But this was a very different process. I really wanted to produce a finely polished studio recording and really take my time doing it. I learned a lot recording the first album, and so there were definitely a lot of things I wanted to do differently here. But the important thing to me, and one of the really major differences between this and my first album, was that I actually play piano through the entire album on Love Cycle, and I didn't play keys at all on my first album, even though I wrote all of the songs on the piano.
Interesting.
So not only do I play the piano on this album, it was also important for me to capture the sound and the feeling of my instrument in my space, which was what inspired all of these songs. So I actually recorded all of the piano parts on my Steinway grand piano in my apartment known as Dragon's Lair
Oh,
Studios.
cool.
So that is sort of the core of the entire album. Initially, what I wanted to do was record this for my 40th birthday. And I had this grand idea because I wanted to do something that for my 40th birthday that really encompassed my life's work. So originally I was going to record the whole thing live and have another live recording with a live video to accompany it. And so I coordinated that, and that was a whole lengthy process, and I went through a couple of drummers there. I knew that I wanted to do it on a particular date, and of course there are certain people that I always have in mind when I'm writing things now. Is in particular, Jeff Buckridge is my number one main guitar player. Like, he and I were kind of cut from the same musical cloth. We were both heavily influenced by classic rock bands like the Beatles and Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix. So we are very much on the same wavelength there. And that's the kind of guitar playing that I hear in my head when I'm writing my songs. So, of course, Jeff was my first call, but unfortunately, he wasn't available for the day that I was doing this live recording on my birthday. So I figured out who was available, and I actually ended up with a show like 3 days before my birthday that was going to be sort of a run through of it. And we did some rehearsals, and so I had the people that were available for this show and for the live recording, which were not necessarily the same people who were available after this. So I did this whole recording, did the show, did the recording, and the day after my birthday, I got the rough mixes back, and I listened back to the audio, and I was like, this is no good. This is not at all what I wanted. And I kind of went into a panic thinking, oh my gosh, did I just waste all of this time and money and energy creating this thing that is not what I wanted? And I was like, how am I going to turn this around? So I decided then that what I would do is allow that live recording to just be its own thing and release that on its own just as a video. So I ended up doing that, actually, and I released that live video on February 14th, 2024. That was sort of in production while I was also, I decided I was going to re-record this entire thing starting the day after I got this rough recording of the live video. So the first thing that I did was record all of the piano parts on my instrument in my home. And I had to call around to find yet another drummer, because now what I was doing, instead of doing it everybody in the same place, I was going to do it remotely. So I had to find a drummer who was set up to record in their own studio. So I called up my friend Russ Sternglass, who's amazing. I've done a bunch of gigging with him in Booty Vortex and with another GB band that I played with. And Russ is a phenomenal studio drummer. So I sent him the piano tracks, and he recorded these drum parts, sent them back to me. I sent them to the engineer, Will Holland at Chill House Studio, who actually recorded my first album. And Will sent it back to me. I got it all mixed down, and then I sent it to my bass player, Bob Abruzzi, who is my bass player throughout. He's just always there. So I sent the tracks to Bob, and he recorded both upright and electric bass tracks in his home studio, sent them to me. So I sent them to Will. Will mixed it all in with the bass, or with the drums and the piano. And I got it back, and I sat and listened to it, and it was okay. It didn't sound bad, but it was really missing something. And the thing that it was missing was that intangible element that's present when everyone is in the same room together.
Yes.
And there's only one way to get that. So I booked a studio session in October of 2024. Now, fortunately, Russ was not available to play drums on that studio session. So I called my OG beastie Zeke Martin to play drums. So Zeke came to our studio session along with Bob on the bass again. And we also had Riley Stockwell on guitar. And I really love Riley's playing because he gets very spacey and ambient and ethereal, and there was a lot of room for that in this sound, and I wanted that aspect of it, especially at the end of For Love, which is the second movement of the song cycle. We have this period where it sort of just like floats away into the cosmos, and that's all Riley just doing stuff on his guitar pedal board, which I affectionately have dubbed the space station.
Nice.
So I tried to get Jeff Buckridge, but Jeff wasn't available that day. But I had Bob and I had Riley and Zeke and my good friend sax master Eric Schindler, who was all over my first album. And Eric is just one of the most incredible saxophone players I've ever heard. He was not available for the live video, so I actually had my band wife Nancy Lodi play sax on the live recording that we did, but she wasn't available. She's also my first call, but she wasn't available for the session. So, true to Mythical Beasts form, it's me and whoever's available for the gig. But of course, I had these people in mind that I wanted to work with. So the studio session was me, Zeke Martin, Baba Bruzy, and Eric Schindler. And so we went into Chill House Studios and we played along to the piano tracks that I had pre-recorded at home. So I was singing this whole thing live, and all the drums, bass, guitar, and sax was done live in the studio. And I still wanted Jeff Buckridge's guitar parts. So we wrapped up that studio session and it was great. And then we sat with it for a while, and I had Riley re-record some parts at home, and it was coming back and it just wasn't quite what I wanted. So we kind of put that on hold and went through the drum parts, and it turned out that I actually liked what Russ Sternglass did for the intro and outro better than what we had for than what Zeke had played in the studio. So I ended up using Russ for the intro, outro, those parts recorded remotely, and then we used Zeke's live parts for Love, Love is Everything, and Give Thanks for the 3 songs in the middle. And so, months are going by, and I'm going back and forth with Riley, and then Jeff had a bunch of gigs. So January 24, Jeff finally sends me his guitar tracks, and every single note he played was perfect. So we got all that stuff squared away, and then I wanted organ on this. And of course, because I love Nancy Lodi, I wanted her to come and play on it too. So I had sent the tracks to Justin Lopes, who played organ on my first album, and he's always my number one call for keys. And he sent me back some stuff that he had recorded in his home studio, and it just was not doing it for me. So I booked another studio session with Will, and I brought Justin into Chill House Studios, and I brought Nancy Lodi in that same day. So we first recorded Nancy doing a bunch of stuff with the flute, but we ended up cutting all of that out because Nancy hadn't really sat with the recordings long enough to kind of process where she might fit into it. She was just kind of playing along. So what she was doing wasn't really working with what Eric was playing on the saxophone, and it just was too much to have these 2 instruments kind of butting heads there. So we ended up leaving all the flute stuff on the cutting room floor, so to speak. And then Justin came in the same session right after Nancy, and I sat beside Justin at the organ, and I conducted with my whole body all of the ebbs and flows of the tempos and exactly what I wanted, and he played it perfectly again, it was a completely different sound than what he had done remotely, so it really did need me to just sit there with him and guide the whole thing along. So that came out beautifully. And then after that began the mixing, and that was when we spent hours and hours and hours figuring out what to keep, what we're not going to use. That was kind of the challenge for Will as the engineer. Will is an absolute master at his craft. And we ended up creating this beautiful mix where it's like the piano is at the base of everything. And then there's this fount of sort of on either side. There's like the saxophone on one side, the guitar on one side, and then we have the drums sort of just above, and then the bass sort of in the center, and then we've got the organ on one side. And so things are sort of like evenly placed around the center and above this foundation of the piano, and then the vocals just sort of this like skyscape over everything. So when you're listening to it, especially during the intro, there's this sense of like this wide open vista or a mirage, even glimmering on the edge of the horizon in the desert, and then just sort of bubbling up from the center. So that was kind of what I had in mind as I was writing. And Will just magically made it happen. Then everything got put on hold as my mother's health declined and she ultimately passed.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Zoe.
Thank you. Yeah, she passed a year after I started recording the whole thing. Yeah, well, a year and 10 days. Right. So I started re-recording the entire thing for the studio version on August 17th, 2023. And my mother passed away August 27th, 2024. So things got put on hold. But meanwhile, I have this mix, I had the masters, and it was just waiting for me to create all the artwork and redesign the website and manufacture a whole release and promotion to go along with it. And I just wasn't there. It took me about 6 months to even really think about that stuff.
Totally understandable.
And initially, I wanted to actually release it on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025, which would have been a year to the day from when I released the live video. But I just had a lot going on and I was not ready to do it. And I knew that the next auspicious day after the spring equinox, March 21st, would have been Beltane, which is usually around May 1st. And I didn't want to wait that long, so I pushed myself to get it out by March 21st, and I'm so glad that I did. I think the world just needs it. The sooner the better,
I agree, and I'm so happy that you released it. I absolutely love the whole theme of this album, and I think it's exactly what the world needs right now, which is community, love, gratitude. Could you tell us a bit about how you came up with the concept for this album?
So the process of writing this actually was several years long. It wasn't all written at the same time by any means. The outro actually was the first thing that I wrote, and I wrote that many years ago. For a long time, that outro was the first thing that I would play when I sat down to practice the piano, and it was the last thing that I would play when I finished before I got up. And I probably wrote that, oh gosh, in the early 2010s, 2011, 20 teens, somewhere around there. And it was something that it was just there, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, where it was going to fit in. It definitely didn't fit in with the other material from The Good, the first album. And it was just sort of this very different vibe, but it was very much where I was rooted before I discovered how much I love funk and blues and soul. And it was always meant to be something that I could play just as a meditation. It was never just, a song that I would play a certain number of times and then it was over. I would sit down and I would play it as many times as I needed to play it until I was in the headspace that I needed to be in to do whatever it was that I was doing at the piano that day. I might need to play it for a few minutes before I could get up. And it's called Rolling Tide because it ebbs and it flows, and it just has this like movement and this motion, this flowing sense to it, which is exactly where my thoughts would go. And there was no beginning and no end. It would just continuously loop. When I played it for the recording that I did, I didn't even think about how many times I was playing it. I played the first four movements, and then I played this as many times as I felt like I needed to play it to give this whole song cycle the conclusion that I felt it wanted. So I let the music guide me there. So besides that, For Love, the second movement, I wrote right after I finished recording The Good in 2019. And had I written it a week earlier, it would have been on the first album.
Oh, wow.
So I was in a place where I was really riding high. I had just finished this weekly residency at the Plow and Stars. I was playing 50 shows a year, doing a ton of gigs. So we actually started playing that one out right away. And the band had kind of gotten used to it by the time The Good actually was released, right after the world shut down for in 2020. But I had this song and I wanted to kind of continue developing it. So when the world shut down, I had played For Love, and I noticed that it was really just this like driving rock bluesy thing. And it had these themes. I was starting to move away from writing songs about me personally and toward writing songs that speak to universal truths.
Oh, I really like that.
And just the human experience in general. Because I think the more we can speak to these experiences that we all share, the more relevant the music is, rather than just being about one specific situation or one specific feeling. And those songs are great too. They have their place for sure. But I was over making it all about me.
I think that's a really refreshing way to write.
I was very much in an introverted space and trying to figure out how to express this desire I had to share everything with the world. And in the beginning of the pandemic, I was looking at it as, everybody's sort of going into this dark night of the soul, and people are responding to this forced isolation in a lot of different ways. And a lot of people were confronting their true selves and their inner demons for the very first time.
So true.
But for me, I went through all of that long ago, and I had been well practiced in repeatedly going through that, so it wasn't something that was intimidating to me. And so I felt that what I could offer from my experience was how to navigate that and what the gifts are that come from facing your own demons and your own darkness. So the next thing that came to me was Love is Everything. And with this song, the process for writing every song is always a little bit different. They don't usually come out in the same order. So for Love, the lyrics first. And then I wrote the music to go along to it and found a melody. Now, Love is Everything, with that, I had been exploring some modal chord progressions that were based on a song that one of my students was working on. And we were kind of deconstructing this song because he was writing his own stuff, and we were discussing why that progression sort of worked so well and what are the elements of it. So as we were deconstructing it, I reconstructed it and came up with this piano part, which had its own melody, the da 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 da, and at the same time, kind of also thinking like, how few notes can I use for a melody? And this melody only has 3 or 4 notes, so it doesn't need much. And so I was kind of mulling over this chord progression in my head, and I was driving one day when the highway was totally empty. I think this might have been a day that like I had taken a 3 a.m. drive up to Marblehead to go to the beach or something. I was bored. And so I was, headed back on the highway at daybreak when the sun was coming up. And I'm hearing this chord progression in my head. And then this lyric and this melody came to me. I open my eyes at the sunrise. It's as bright as your eyes upon me. given the gift of attention, I will make it my work to be worthy. So the lyrics in that song were speaking to what it was that I felt I had to offer, having gone through this dark night of the soul myself, and this eye-opening, enlightening experience. This is what I have learned about the purpose of life. Like, not that I think of myself as being enlightened. I have not reached enlightenment. My eyes have been opened. I've certainly, um, figured out a lot of stuff, but I make no claims that I know anything more than anybody else does. I'm just trying to share what I know for the benefit of everyone, because I think that's ultimately our highest purpose, is to identify our gifts and share them for the good of all mankind.
Agreed.
So this was my gift, was sharing this wisdom of this process. I got home and I sang these lyrics to this melody that was already happening in this piano part that I had written. And Love is Everything came pouring out, and I just sort of started vamping over that, and it went into this like incredible place where I'm just realizing, yes, love is the answer to all of it. Love is the glue that's holding the universe together. And so having this revelation with like, for love is, I'm singing a song to the moon because she knows who I am. I sing a song to the moon because she knows who I've been. I sing a song to the moon because she knows who I'm gonna be. I don't know who that is, but I know she will still be there for me then. And that's speaking to this like total surrender to the powers that be. Like, okay, I see where I've been and I see where I am. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going, but I trust that the universe will support me and guide me along this path wherever it is. And then to come to this oracle, this monument in the path that says that this is the thing, this is where we are dancing around this love. And then coming out of that song, it's like, well, okay, that's great, but like, now what? What do we
Right.
do with that information? Okay, so now I know the meaning of life, but what do I do with that? It's like, that and $5 will get me a cup of coffee. um so so during this time, I was also studying piano with the extraordinary organ player and pianist Rusty Scott, who you may know from the B3 Kings and Roomful of Blues. And I was really exploring a lot of sort of like walking bass left hand stuff. And I played Love is Everything, and I got to the end and I felt, now where do I go from here? This is this very like mellow, spaced out sort of feeling. How do we bring this back into earth? I felt like it needed something just really buoyant and exciting and happy, like bringing us into this like beautiful place. So I came up with the bass line for Give Thanks. That thing, and I was like, oh, that's fun. It's funky, and I feel like dancing. I feel like giving thanks. I've gone through this journey. I surrendered myself to the powers that be, and they responded with this message that I am here for love. We are all here for love. And how do we best integrate that? How better to integrate that message than to give thanks for everything? And there's such tremendous power in gratitude. I have an old friend who would always say in our gatherings, I knew this friend through the pagan community and through ritual, so we've been in ceremony together a lot, and he would always say, give thanks.
Nice.
And that just stuck with me so much. And so that just became the refrain of this song, was give thanks. And well, what am I giving thanks for? Let's start for the body that we live in, and then the air that we breathe, and the planet we live on, and the food that we eat. So giving thanks for like these very physical, material things that we are all sharing, that we are all experiencing together. It can be hard sometimes to figure out what we're grateful for, especially if you feel like your life is in a really rough place. Well, you're still breathing. We still have a mind. We can still think. We can still care. We can still speak. We have all of these things that we can do, that we are capable of. regardless of how differently we are able. And I thought that was the best way to bring that love into everything, because I think that the act of giving thanks is sharing love. So I wrote this next song, Give Thanks, as this ode to all of the things that are and all of the things that allowed me to be here, which especially included all of the people that supported me on this journey where I felt so isolated. And all these people were there to just catch me, and I had been taking them for granted. So Give Thanks was about returning that love and that gratitude to them, and realizing that we don't have to do it alone. And everything gets so much easier when we share that love by giving our thanks to the people and the things that support us along our journeys. And the more we give, the more we get. So that ended, and it ended in the same key as Rolling Tide. And it used all the same chords. And I realized that all of the songs for love, Love is Everything, Give Thanks, and the outro all used the same exact chords
Oh,
in a
wow.
very particular mode of the scale. I wrote the intro last. It was interesting because I think I actually wrote the outro first. And then I went to the second movement and the third movement and the fourth movement, and then through the outro. And then I came back around to the beginning and I started just exploring this modal space of that scale. And that's where the intro was born. So there was no groove. It was just what happens in this sonic soundscape. What bubbles up, you know? So the intro is sort of exploring this big soundscape and seeing the oasis shimmering on the edge of the horizon and beginning to bubble up from the central fount as we approach it and get closer and look at what is this thing. Well, this thing is really this temple, this altar that we are surrendering in prostration with for love. So it moves through this whole sequence of, being wandering alone in the desert and then approaching this glimmering shimmer of hope in the middle of the desert, this oasis, if you will, and then surrendering to the powers that be there, and then receiving this message that love is everything in the liminal space, and then leaving that, shall we say, temple, and carrying that message through with us in our daily lives in the form of gratitude, letting that sort of flow as it does into the rolling tide, and then coming back around again to the intro. And the whole
Ah.
thing loops much like the Ouroboros, which is the mythical serpent that eats its own tail. Sort
Oh.
of follows itself around there. It's this cycle. So it's the love cycle. It's about love for the self and love for everyone else, love for the powers that be, love for the universe, love for our communities, all of that.
I have to say, that's definitely what shines through with this album. And after listening to it, it made me feel really hopeful and grateful. And it made me feel like we are better together than alone. So embrace your community, give thanks, let's help each other out. We're so much stronger together than apart.
So glad that you received that message from it, and that was my hope, was that it would be received as sort of this rallying cry without being overtly a protest song like I had. Like Equality for All on The Good is just, it's an anthem, and The Good itself is a protest song. So that was sort of what I wanted to do, was create this thing without it making it, a strong social or political statement, just to be about the evolution of the human soul.
And you had mentioned to me that you were preparing to release a video for the album and that it was filmed in a really cool place or cool places. Can you tell us a bit about that and when you expect that might come out?
Of course. So there is an accompanying conceptual art film, which includes 3 standalone videos for the 3 songs in the middle. And initially, we began recording for this at my 40th birthday party, which was 3 days before we did the live recording on my actual 40th birthday. And I had it was sort of a surprise theme that my best friends had decided for me, and the theme, of course, was Mythical Beasts. And it was great. So we had this Well, actually, first, the Friday night that weekend, I played a benefit show for Spontaneous Celebrations, which is my local nonprofit community arts center that actually just facilitated their 47th annual Wake Up the Earth Festival in Jamaica Plain, Boston, which is really an extraordinary festival. It's very multicultural. There are like four stages of music from all over the world. There's an activist stage, there was the queer stage, there was the dance stage, there was the main band stage, and all kinds of vendors and community organizations represented there, and people of all ages, lots of children, lots of dogs. It's just a
Oh,
wonderful time. So anyway, Spontaneous Celebrations was having this fundraiser party, and this is really what I wanted to do for my birthday, was to contribute to something that's greater than myself. So I was thrilled to play this show, which also doubled as my birthday party, and we ended up raising $9,000 toward a matching grant for the community center
that's
to get solar
incredible.
panels. So it turned out really, really great. But I had a videographer come and record our set, and while this party was going on, I had so many loved ones that came to celebrate me. We did all these short little videos of people just saying "give thanks" to the camera. So we took all of these clips of all of these wonderful people in my community that were present, just saying "give thanks," and those are all being used in the "give thanks" video, as well as footage from our actual set that we played that night. And then the day after this show, my best friends threw me this party for our more intimate friend group at their psychedelic mural painted mermaid garden house on a private beach.
Ooh,
um,
fancy.
it was wonderful, and so my best beastie, she had got these books that each contained something like 20 different cardboard masks that you could assemble with just like some scotch tape, and there were all kinds of different creatures in there. There were hydras, and there was Medusa, and there were unicorns and dragons and vampires and Egyptian goddesses and pharaohs, like all kinds of different creatures. So I had a videographer come to this as well. And when we were inviting people to this, I told everybody that we were going to be filming for my music video. So everybody dressed in their finery, and we went and we lit a fire on the beach, and everybody put their Mythical Beast masks on, and we all danced around the fire at sunset. Um, so there is a limited amount of footage from that because unfortunately the videographer's cameras were not very good for low light. So a lot of the footage sadly was unusable, but there are a few clips that I was able to get. Especially there's one that I actually did on my iPhone, which is me and all of the guests at the party at the end of the party, all huddled together in this corner of the room saying, "Give thanks," all together. So it's my whole community, my whole close circle of people, and all of our masks and all of our glory just being
That's awesome.
and so that's one of the, one of the final images in the give thanks video. So I wanted to make these videos. Oh, actually, and then we continued to record. We ended up having to actually re-record the scenes around the fire because my concept was that I wanted the videos to reflect the evolution that happens during the music. So the first movement, the video, is this lone figure conjuring around a fire by themselves, and it's actually me, and I've got my paper unicorn mask on and this cloak that I made a few years ago, and my best friends had a Pink Floyd theme Halloween party, and I made a cloak that looks like the dark side of the moon. So it's all black velvet on one side and the inside is black satin, but I made these panels of rainbow colored satin from the neckline down. So if I open it up, it looks like the prism coming through the triangle on the cover of Dark Side of the Moon. Anyway, so I'm wearing this like black and rainbow cloak with the unicorn mask conjuring up around a fire, but it's just me in the first movement. And then the video for Love is just me in largely in the solarium at the Museum of Modern Renaissance, which is this extraordinary space in Somerville, Massachusetts, that was created by two artists, this wonderful Russian couple, They bought this space. It was used to be a Masonic lodge, and they bought this and they converted the entire thing into this entirely muraled sanctuary and sacred space. So every single inch of this place has been painted with some sort of iconic archetypal imagery. And it was sort of this strange sequence of events that led me to the place like 3 weeks before. Um, so, as I said, we re-recorded the parts of me around the fire, and we brought my friends in, recorded that around the fire, and then we created. I was going to do another show that we were going to videotape, and that was going to be most of the footage in the video of Love is Everything. So I booked this show at my friend's space, and then it was a very limited space. And then 17 days before the show, we realized that we were unable to move the piano to where it needed to be for me to actually do this video shoot there. So all of a sudden, I have to find myself a new venue. So I called my good friend, who's my piano guy, who maintains my Steinway here, and he hooked me up with the manager at Scullers Jazz Club in Boston. So, but in the process, while I was trying to find a venue, I remembered that I had seen a video, a reel on Facebook. A friend of mine played a show at the Museum of Modern Renaissance like a week before, and I realized that there was a piano in this video, and I thought, I'm kind of in the neighborhood. I'm just going to go to this place and see if it's available. And so I went there and I was able to somehow like connect with friends and get the owner's phone number and contact it, because I got there and it was all locked up. But I knew the right people. So I got the phone number of the person who was living there and caretaking the place, and she let me in. And as soon as I set foot in this building, my jaw just hit the floor, and I was like, this is where I need to film this video. And I hadn't even considered it. I thought I was just going to use the footage of, my friends and I dancing around the fire in their yard and the footage of the show at Scullers. But then I found this incredible space, and I walk in, and all of the archetypes and the imagery that are in the lyrics of this song cycle were present in the paintings. And of course, they also had a gorgeous grand piano in the sanctuary. And I was like, yep, seals the deal for me. So I booked a video shoot for the day after the Scullers show. It was like whirlwind of a 3 week period. It was 17 days. It wasn't even 3 weeks. It was 17 days. um, that I coordinated this whole thing, and I called the videographer. I was like, yes, we're gonna do it on this day. And so Pat Hanlon has been amazing. He's the videographer that shot the live video, and then reshot the scenes around the fire, and then shot the Scullers video, and then shot me in the Museum of Modern Renaissance. So we spent many hours in that space getting all kinds of cool, crazy shots, because there was so much to look at and so many options for backdrops in this space. It was very versatile. So it turns out that, as I said, the first movement of the video is me just around the fire conjuring, and then the second movement, For Love, is just me in the sanctuary and in the solarium at the Museum of Modern Renaissance. So there's no other people featured, because I wanted it to represent like the individual, this sort of isolation, this independence that's in that part of the song cycle. And then the third movement, Love is Everything, now we're starting to bring in images or videos from the Scullers shoot. So now it's me with the band. There are a couple of other people here helping me to receive this message, but we're still not engaged with the wider community at this point. So it's the Love is Everything video that's still got a little bit of tweaking to do. I've got another couple of sessions with Pat on the schedule, hoping to have this finished up and released by the end of the summer. So we're kind of like working from the outside to the middle of this video. So the outro of the video is the group of my friends with all of our Mythical Beast masks dancing around the fire, because that's representing the community that we have gone through. And the Give Thanks video features all of these clips from the party and these celebrations and these shows. So it's featuring all of my community and all of my loved ones who were participating in that. So the Love is Everything video is sort of the transition point between the individual expanding into the collective. So this is like, it's the peak of the trip. And that's the part that we're sort of navigating right now. But it's got all these themes of like lots of space and cosmic stuff and going through wormholes to get us transported into a whole new place, because that was the point of the music, was to start in one place and then bring you through a process and leave you in a new and different place than where we began. Yeah, I'm hoping that these videos are going to be done by the end of the summer, but I really wanted to make these videos because I don't have any music videos out yet. So I wanted to have a very finely polished, well-produced studio recording and music videos so that I just have stuff out there.
And do you have any upcoming gigs on the horizon to promote the album?
Yeah, so I'm just starting to get back into booking gigs right now. As I said, after my mom passed, it was a very profound time in my life. And I think for anybody who's experienced it, the death of a parent is a really pivotal moment in one's life, regardless of the relationship that you have with that parent. And in the last 4.5 years, I've lost both my dad and my mom. But losing my mom was a completely different experience than losing my dad. And it's taken me some time to begin to come through the other side of that. And the thing about grief is that it changes you in ways that you never would expect, and in ways that are often hard to put into words. And so now that I'm on the beginning to get on the other side of this thing, I'm just feeling like I am finally ready to put myself in front of an audience. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago when I released The Good. I am not the same person I was 1 year ago when I was filming all of this stuff. And when I finally got back to the videos in December, the first time I sat down with Pat and looked at the videos, I wept because I saw this gorgeous woman serenading on the screen, and she looked amazing and she sounded amazing, and that was me. But I felt so incredibly far removed from that person that I had forgotten that she existed. So I'm sort of slowly finding my way back to that, but not to that exactly. Finding my way to the person that I am now, who includes that previous version of myself, but is more expansive. I'm just beginning to get back out there and book shows again. And I'm just being very selective about the performances that I'm doing. And I'm not so concerned about gigging. Really, all I want is for people to hear this music and to find some healing and peace in these songs.
Please do tell the listeners where we can get a copy of your album. I want people to go out and buy it and listen to it and be really inspired by it, just like I was.
Sure. Well, both of the albums are available on every streaming service. The best way to find them is to go to my website, mythicalbeastsband.com, and you can find the links to all of your streaming services at the top of the website. And you can also buy the albums directly from my web store. And that's the best way to support me, honestly, because all that money goes right to me.
Yes, indeed. I always try to hammer home to people, especially in the case of independent local artists, the best way to support them is to buy their music direct from them versus streaming, so they get a much better payout than the streaming platforms offer, which is absolutely nil. It's like 0.001 cent per download or something ridiculous like that. It's a great way to support your local artists when you can buy directly from them.
Yeah, and I have to say the album artwork for Love Cycle is really special as well. It features a beautiful painting. It's actually a 30-inch by 30-inch acrylic on canvas painting of the flying merzebracorn, which I had this painting commissioned by an artist whose name is Michael Pukash. He's based in Long Beach, California, and I have been following his work for probably about 15 years. I've been a really big fan. And he had a piece that I kind of became obsessed with called the Flying Mertigercorn. And I actually reached out to him to see if that painting was available. And he said it was, and he told me the price. And I thought, if I'm going to pay that much for a painting, I should be able to write it off as a business expense. And so I asked him if he would make me a flying mertigercorn that was square so that I could use it as an album cover. And he said, yeah, sure. And then while that was, in its beginning phases, I looked through more of his work, and I saw that he had another creature that I also kind of became obsessed with, which was the flying merzebracorn. And if you know anything about me and ponies and zebras and unicorns, we're kind of a thing. So I was like, well, if I'm getting a flying mertigercorn, I think I also need a flying merzebracorn. So he said he would make me one of those too. So he made me this pair of creatures, these extraordinary paintings, and sent them to me. And I told him exactly what colors I wanted and the kind of creatures. So they're made to my specifications. They were designed specifically for me using my color palette. And I'm thrilled that I have the flying merzebracorn hanging above my piano where I wrote and recorded this music. And the flying mertigercorn hangs above my bed. So I take great delight in every morning waking up and saying, "Good morning, mertigercorn." But the CD features this gorgeous piece, The Flying Merzebracorn by Michael Pukash, and I have some really groovy stickers which feature the Flying Merzebracorn, and some cool dragon stickers with custom artwork by my friend Rick Freed, who did the dragon for the cover of The Good. So there's a bunch of cool stuff on the website, and you can find the streaming links there.
Most excellent. Yeah, I would definitely encourage people to get the physical album if you own a CD player, obviously, because you do get some really cool stickers, and the album artwork is just so beautiful. So, it's really nice to have that tangible product in your hands for sure. I did also want to ask you about your career as a music educator, because you have your own voice studio with your private students, plus you're a professor at Berklee College of Music. Can you tell us what being a music educator means to you?
Yes, I actually am finishing my 4th year as assistant professor of voice at Berklee College of Music, and my 14th year as a private voice and piano instructor. My goal as an educator, specifically a music educator, is to empower individuals with the tools that they need to fully realize their own creative potential and to learn to utilize our gifts to share them for the good of everyone. I have always known that I wanted to be a teacher. Ever since I was a little girl, all I wanted to be was a rock star and a college professor.
Well, there you go. You've accomplished that.
I did. And, it took me, I went like really a roundabout way to get there too. My first 6 years of formal training were all classical voice. I mean, I had taken piano lessons as a small child, and I actually studied percussion from the 5th grade until I graduated high school, and played drum set in the high school jazz band and all that fun stuff. But voice was always my thing. I did a lot of competition singing when I was in high school. Pretty much all classical with a little bit of musical theater. And my first year of college, I actually graduated high school a year early and went to the Crane School of Music at the State University of New York in Potsdam, studying classical voice and music education because I knew I wanted to be a music teacher. And at the time, I also was fronting my hardcore trio. So I was doing the Cookie Monster and playing bass with my trio. And my teachers at the Crane School of Music were not at all supportive of my independent artistic endeavors. And so I left, and life took me on a very different route, and I moved to Pennsylvania, and I was there for a few years before I moved to Boston the first time in 2004. And I had been singing with some bands in Pennsylvania and writing a lot of songs. And I had always been a songwriter ever since I was, a tween. I've been writing original music. And so when I moved to Boston, I started my own band. I sang with a bunch of different bands. I sang with a lot of heavy metal bands, and I was doing a lot of like black metal and like really, gritty stuff. And then I sort of lightened up and did a lot of heavy rock and some like stoner rock and that kind of thing. And then I moved to New York and I was fronting rock bands in New York while I was developing this career in business administration and nonprofit arts management. And then when that ended, and by this time I had actually written an album with my band at the time that was, again, a concept album, but it was like, imagine Tool if they had a female singer. It was kind of like that. And then I moved to Boston to go to Berkeley, and that was where I heard jazz for the first time. And I sang in a professional gospel choir for 3 years while I was a student and was continuing my degree in music education. So I went to Berkeley and I completed 9 consecutive semesters in 3 years, and I graduated summa cum laude with a 3.874 GPA, and started my career as a private teacher. But what the interesting thing was, in my degree in music education, my last semester was student teaching. And the biggest thing that I learned during my student teaching was that was not what I wanted to do at all. And I actually had started teaching voice privately a couple years prior to that when I was still a student. But keep in mind, I had been a band leader in Boston and New York for 10 years and several years prior to that. So I had a long career as a singer prior to starting teaching. I didn't go to Berkeley because I needed to learn to sing. I went there because I wanted to learn how to teach. And when I got to Berkeley and I saw people were teaching privately, and I thought, I guess I'll try that. And then I tried it and realized that this is the thing that people actually make a career out of. Then I figured out that's the kind of teaching that I want to do. And that's where I really shine, is when I'm one-on-one with a student and I get to figure out who they are and where they're at and give them whatever tools that they need to get to where they want to be. And very much tailoring my instruction and my coaching and mentoring to the needs of that individual student. So one of the things that I really love about being at Berkeley was that I get to reach a lot more students and I get to teach actual classes, which are so much fun. So I just love teaching. I love inspiring other musicians to improve, to explore and expand the boundaries of what they think are possible within music and for themselves. And the music and the art that we create is a direct reflection of our own selves and our own psyche. So when we are expanding the boundaries of what's possible in our art, we are expanding the boundaries of what's possible within our own ways of thinking.
Are you accepting any private students right now? And if so, how can people go about finding out how they can work with you?
I am actually accepting new students. I do have a few openings right now. Usually, I don't actually have a website for my teaching. All of my studio has grown through word of mouth. I've been a fixture in my community in Rosendale, Massachusetts for 15 years, and my students have been with me for years, and they tell all their friends about the good word. So people just come to me, and usually I have a waiting list. And right now, I've actually got a couple openings for the summer, so I am accepting new students, but I don't have a website to point to beyond mythicalbeastsband.com.
Do you have an email address that people could reach out to?
Absolutely. zoeknightmusic@gmail.com. Or if you go to my website, there's a contact form. You can reach out to me through there. If you fill out that contact form, it's going to come to one of my email addresses. So I will get back to you there.
This has been so interesting talking to you, Zoe, and I'm thrilled your new album, Love Cycle, is out for the world to listen to. Folks, if you would like to get a copy of Love Cycle or also a copy of Zoe's other album, The Good, I'm going to put her website, her social media channels, and contact information in the show notes so you can click on all of that and get her music into your hands. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Zoe. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Gretchen. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you again to Zoe for coming on the podcast today. As I mentioned, you can find links to get a copy of Zoe's latest album, Love Cycle, as well as her album, The Good, and how you can get in touch with Zoe and follow her on social media. Get yourself a copy of Love Cycle as well as her album The Good and spread the word. It's great to let other people know about New England artists. I hope you'll join me back here on Sunday, May 25th for a brand new episode of Notable New England. I'd be honored to have you join me and we can spend some time together. Until then, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and get out into your community to explore. You never know what you'll find just around the corner. See you next time.